You know that feeling, that sudden, unexpected roadblock in a moment of intimacy, maybe like hitting a wall that just shouldn't be there.
Hmm.
Well, our listener today shared a really insightful guide with us. It's called Stop Painful Sex Healing from Vaginismus, a step-by-step guide. And it speaks right to that experience.
Yeah.
So we're taking a deep dive, really getting into understanding and hopefully finding ways to overcome vaginismus using this guide.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this. Vaginismus, um, the guide lays it out pretty clearly. It's these involuntary muscle contractions
Right.
in the outer part, like the outer third
Yeah.
of the vagina. And they happen during or even just thinking about penetration.
So it's not a choice.
No, absolutely not a conscious choice. And it can make entry really difficult or painful or sometimes just impossible, like you said, hitting that wall.
Yeah,
And you can see how that would cause, real emotional distress, problems in relationships.
totally. And the guide actually breaks it down a bit, mentions different types.
It does. It talks about lifelong vaginismus. So that's there from the very first time someone tries penetration.
Okay.
And then acquired vaginismus, which is different because it develops after a time when things were, sexually fine, normal
Oh, yeah.
function.
So different starting points. That's helpful context.
And it's interesting, the guide also touches on the terminology, like the older term dyspareunia.
Which just means painful sex, generally, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual, uses this broader term, genitopelvic pain penetration disorder.
Okay.
But the key thing the guide points out for vaginismus specifically under the DSM-5 is that there usually need to be psychological factors involved alongside any physical stuff going on.
Got it. So our mission then for this deep dive using this guide, it's really to understand what's happening biologically and psychologically.
Yeah.
We want to look at some of those beliefs that might be holding people back, explore some actual practical steps to ease tension, and ultimately help clear the path towards, comfortable, enjoyable intimacy. Because it's not just about stopping pain, is it?
No, not at all. It's about working towards that connection, that fulfilling experience.
So where does the guide start with that?
Well, it really emphasizes the mind-body connection, how vaginismus often becomes this unconsciously learned behavior.
Unconsciously learned.
Yeah, think about learning to ride a bike like the guide suggests. At first, you're thinking about every single movement, right?
Right.
Super conscious.
Totally wobbling all over the place.
Exactly, but then eventually it just becomes automatic. You don't even think about it. Vaginismus can kind of work like that, and unconscious fear or anxiety just triggers the muscles to tighten up.
And that tightening, it's not just happening in isolation, is it? The guide explains how fear or anxiety can change your breathing, make it shallower.
Right, and that shallow breathing can then trigger stress hormones. We're talking cortisol, adrenaline. So you get this feedback loop. The body's reaction kind of confirms the mind's fear, which then makes the tension and the pain worse.
It feeds the self.
Precisely.
Mm.
Which leads to a really crucial point the guide makes. If it's often unconsciously learned,
Can it be unlearned?
the guide strongly suggests yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Just like you can consciously learn a new habit, maybe a better way to breathe, you can also retrain those muscles to relax.
Okay, that's hopeful. So what does the guide say about potential causes or contributing factors? It stresses that having these doesn't automatically mean you'll get vaginismus, right?
Exactly. It's not a checklist where if you tick a box, you definitely have it.
Yeah.
But these things can play a role.
Like what?
Well, it talks about upbringing.
Yeah.
Maybe a strict religious background where there were negative messages about sex,
Yeah.
even if they weren't explicit.
Implied stuff, like around purity.
Yeah, or just how the genitals were talked about. The guide asks you to think, what names did you use growing up? Were they neutral terms, or did they carry some shame, like being dirty?
That makes sense. Those early messages can run deep.
Absolutely. And it's not just religion. The guide mentioned just negative life experiences or broader societal messages that kind of equate genitals with being wrong or unclean.
Or even being punished as a kid for like normal curiosity about your body.
Right. All those messages we absorb from family, friends, society. They can really shape our unconscious responses later on.
What else?
Another big one is fear and anxiety, specifically about first-time sex being painful.
Yeah. You hear stories.
Exactly. Fueled by stories, maybe media portrayals. And the guide makes a great point about how our imagination can really ramp up those fears, making the body tense up protectively even before anything happens.
And sadly, the guide also has to address trauma, doesn't it? Like sexual abuse or rape.
Yes. Those experiences can understandably lead the body to develop that involuntary muscle contraction as a kind of defense mechanism, and that response can stick around.
even in situations later that are wanted.
Unfortunately, yes. Then shifting gears a bit, there are potential physical factors too. Like some people just naturally have a higher resting tone in their pelvic floor muscles, the PC muscle group.
Like how some people clench their jaw.
Kind of like that, yeah. Those muscles might just tense up more easily under stress.
And what about relationships or physical changes?
Yeah, the guide mentions underlying emotional issues or conflict in a relationship as a possible trigger. And things like menopause, where decreased lubrication can lead to pain, which then might trigger vaginismus over time.
Okay.
And then there's a list of other potential physical causes, things after childbirth, some medications, infections like yeast infections or STIs, skin conditions, maybe endometriosis, UTIs, even a tipped uterus.
Lots of possibilities.
But again, the guide circles back to that point. For the official vaginismus diagnosis, usually those psychological factors need to be part of the picture, even if there's a medical thing contributing to.
Right. Okay, so we've covered the what and some of the potential whys.
Right.
Now let's get into something really important. The guide tackles those limiting beliefs.
Yes, this is huge.
Yeah.
Because the number one message here is that healing is possible.
It's not a life sentence.
Absolutely not. Vaginismus isn't something you just have to live with forever.
The guide had a really interesting point about how natural arousal is, even from when we're tiny.
Yeah, it talks about baby boys having erections, baby girls having genital swelling, lubrication. Even infants sometimes seem to kind of masturbate just exploring their bodies.
Wow.
It really throws into contrast how much shame around bodies and pleasure gets learned later on.
That's powerful. What about healing from past negative experiences?
The guide is optimistic here too. It says traumas can heal, negative memories can be reprocessed. It even briefly mentions NLP,
Neuro-linguistic programming.
right, as a potential tool. The idea is that how we remember things, how we hold on to them can actually shift quite dramatically sometimes.
And that connects to the idea that beliefs aren't set in stone, right?
Exactly. The guide really hammers this home. Beliefs aren't reality. They're thoughts, assumptions, and they can change. When we get new information, new insights, make a conscious effort.
I like that analogy they used about the mother banning the party.
Yeah, where just seeing it from a different angle completely changes the belief about whether she was being mean or protective. Perspective is key.
So applying that back to vaginismus.
It's largely a learned pattern of holding tension, like biting your nails or hunching your shoulders. And just like those habits, the guide argues, this pattern can be unlearned with focused effort and retraining.
Okay, so that leads us nicely into the practical steps the guide offers for actually reducing that tension. Where does it start?
It starts foundational. Breathwork.
That makes sense.
Yeah. First up is belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. The guide explains this is actually how we're naturally meant to breathe. You see babies doing it.
Yeah.
But lots of us kind of unlearn it.
Right, we breathe up in our chests more.
Exactly. So the exercise is simple.
Mm-hmm.
Lie down, maybe 6-10 minutes, hand on your stomach, just focusing on feeling your belly rise as you inhale and fall as you exhale. The key is that this type of breathing helps calm your nervous system, that fight or flight response. This helps switch it off.
Okay, belly breathing.
Then there's full lung breathing.
Yeah.
Similar idea, another 6-10 minute exercise, sitting or standing this time. Hands on belly and chest, feeling movement in both, but still focusing mainly on the belly.
Uh-huh.
And a quick check called angel wings breathing, just to feel if your diaphragm is moving down into your lower back and sides too.
Got it.
And then one that's really useful, the 4-7-8 breathing technique.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
The guide mentions its roots in older practices, but it's used a lot now for stress and anxiety. You inhale for a count of 4.
Okay.
Hold the breath gently for 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 8, making a soft whoosh sound.
Inhale 4, hold 7, exhale 8.
Right. And it suggests starting with just 4 rounds. You can even use your heartbeat to time it if counting feels weird. That longer exhale is really key for calming things down.
Okay, breathwork is covered. What's next in the practical toolkit?
Body awareness. And the guide really stresses creating the right space for this. Private, quiet, comfortable. Turn off the phone, make it dedicated time.
Setting the stage. Important.
Totally. It starts with mindfulness,
Mm.
which is basically just paying attention to what's happening right now without judging it.
How does the exercise work?
You lie down comfortably and just gently notice things, sounds around you, physical sensations in your body, maybe warmth or coolness, what you can see, smell, taste, the feeling of your breath, And if thoughts drift in, just notice them and let them go.
And the point of that for vaginismus is?
It helps you stay present in your body, especially during intimacy. It counteracts that tendency some people have to kind of check out or dissociate when things feel difficult.
Ah, okay. Makes sense.
Then there's body scanning.
Yep.
Also lying down, focusing on your breath first. Then you slowly bring your attention to different parts of your body, maybe starting at your toes and moving all the way up.
Looking for tension.
Yeah, just noticing any areas that feel tight or tense. And when you find one, you consciously breathe into it, imagining it softening or releasing.
Nice.
Gentle.
And then there's progressive muscle relaxation. This one's a bit more active.
How so?
The idea is you deliberately tense a muscle group, hold it for a few seconds, and then consciously release it completely. Doing that really highlights the difference between tension and relaxation to become more aware of it.
So you tense your feet, then relax them. Tense your legs, relax them.
Exactly.
Okay.
The guide walks you through a sequence: feet, legs, butt, and pelvis, including the PC muscles, stomach, back, shoulders, neck, face, arms, hands. Tense, hold, release. And after each release, you pause and notice that feeling of calm spreading.
Okay, that sounds really useful for learning control.
It is. Then the guide moves into exploring erogenous zones.
Oh. Yeah, but it frames it as sensual exploration, not necessarily immediately sexual. It's about discovery.
How does it suggest doing that?
Gently touching different parts of your body. Maybe drawing light lines or circles, trying different pressures. Closing your eyes can heighten things. Keep breathing deeply.
Uh-huh.
It even lists common zones: ears, lips, neck, breasts, lower back, inner arms, palms, vulva, clitoris, inner thighs, ankles, soles of feet.
Wow, pretty comprehensive list.
Yeah, and it suggests maybe journaling what you find,
Mm.
any surprises, maybe an area ticklish instead of sensual. The point is just building awareness, which can actually increase sensitivity over time.
Interesting. What about the PC muscles specifically, Kegels?
Right, so Kegels. The guide mentions that while some theories link vaginismus to overactive PC muscles, the real key is gaining conscious control. Knowing how to tense them, yes, but crucially knowing how to fully release them.
So it's not just about strengthening them endlessly.
Not necessarily. It's about control and relaxation. The guide explains how to find the muscle, the one you use to stop peeing midstream. Then the exercises are like that progressive relaxation. Squeeze and hold for maybe 3 counts, then fully release and relax.
Okay.
It suggests doing maybe 15 quick squeeze and release reps, focusing on the release part, twice a day, and maybe another session with longer holds, like 5 seconds, again followed by complete relaxation. You can work them into your daily routine.
Makes sense. Okay, then we get to dilator therapy. This sounds quite practical.
It is. The guide presents it as a very direct approach. Usually, it involves a set of smooth, medical-grade dilators starting small and gradually increasing in size.
Important to get medical grade ones, I guess?
Definitely. The guide strongly recommends talking to a healthcare professional first and buying them from a reputable medical supplier.
Good advice. How do you use them?
You set aside maybe 30 minutes, create that calm, private space again, lie down comfortably, maybe use some relaxation techniques first, especially focusing on relaxing the pelvic area. Apply plenty of lubricant. Water-based is usually recommended to the smallest dilator and to the vaginal entrance. Then gently insert the dilator only as far as feels comfortable. Deep breaths are key here.
Mm-hmm.
The guide suggests visualizing your vaginal walls as soft, stretchy, relaxed. Maybe try to insert a tiny bit further with each exhale, then just hold it there comfortably for about 15 minutes. Breathe, relax.
And then?
Remove it gently, and take a moment afterwards to just notice how that felt. The guide emphasizes doing this daily if possible, and only moving up to the next size when the current one feels consistently comfortable and easy.
Patience is key.
Absolutely. It also mentions you can eventually try gentle rotation or small movements once the size feels okay, and that for some people, a very slim vibrator might be an alternative to a dilator.
Lots of options. Okay, one more practical tool mentioned.
Yes, masturbation. The guide talks about it as a really powerful tool for healing and learning, because it's something where you have 100% control. There's no pressure from a partner, no external expectations. It's a safe space to explore your own arousal, figure out what feels good, what works for you.
Makes sense. It bypasses the pressure of penetration.
Exactly. The guide mentions different ways: pillow rubbing, hands, toys, whatever feels right. It also acknowledges that some people might feel shame or embarrassment around it because of learned beliefs.
Right, back to those limiting beliefs again.
Yeah. So it encourages gently confronting those feelings. And it prompts some reflection. How does self-pleasuring feel? Easy, enjoyable, challenging. What are you learning? What might you want to explore next? It's about reclaiming that connection with your own body and pleasure.
Okay, wow. We have definitely covered a lot of ground from
Yeah.
this guide. If you had to sort of boil it down, what are the absolute key takeaways our listeners should hold on to?
Well, I think first and foremost, the message that vaginismus is real, it's treatable, and it involves both the body and the mind. Understanding that connection is vital. Second, that addressing those underlying beliefs, the psychological side, is just as important as the physical exercises. They work together.
Right.
Third, the practical tools are there. The breath work, the body awareness, the dilators. These are concrete steps you can take to reduce tension and build comfort.
Yeah.
And finally, maybe the most important, self-compassion. Being kind to yourself through this process and knowing it's okay to seek support, whether from a professional or trusted sources.
Yeah, it really feels like the overall message from the guide is one of hope, doesn't it? And empowerment.
Definitely. It really emphasizes that most people can achieve pain-free intercourse. It puts the listener in the driver's seat of their healing journey, finding what works for them at their pace.
It's about agency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which maybe leads to a final thought, something to ponder from the guide.
Go on.
Well, in a world that often seems very focused on penetration as the sort of the main event of sex,
Yeah.
the guide kind of implicitly and maybe explicitly asks, who decided that? Who said sex is only about penetration?
Ah, that's a really good question to leave people with.
Maybe exploring that, broadening the definition of intimacy and pleasure for yourself could be a really valuable part of this whole journey.